Each day here on the Sports Bash, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, and of course, Inside the Birds on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcasts is where you find Jeff Mosher, Andrew DeCecco, and of course, Adam Caplan is back here for another edition of Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Tuesday afternoon as the Eagles are preparing for their second Super Bowl in 3 years. And the man himself, Adam Caplan, is at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama, where him and Jeff travel to each year to get the latest information on the NFL for all of you who listen to the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, welcome in. How you doing today?
Josh, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, so this is my 24th Senior Bowl. So the Eagles, Josh, have a very strong history. They're top 3 of players drafted out of the Senior Bowl. So this is an important week for them. Now, teams don't always send all their scouts, but Jeff and I ran into some of the people here. But to give you an idea how long ago this was and how the Senior Bowl could really help a player. So in 2002, Antoine Randall, who now is a receivers coach, right? He was a option quarterback at University of Indiana, or Indiana University. And he was moved to receiver here. He was thought to be a 7th-round pick or an undrafted free agent. He was so dominant here for the 3 days of practice and in the game, he wound up being drafted in the 2nd round. So why am I bringing this up? If you have an incredible week, Quinyon Mitchell was really good. We'll get into him in a minute. But if you have a great week, you could really help your draft value and stock. And Antoine Randall is one of the best stories. Other than Matt Jones, you might remember Matt Jones, the Arkansas quarterback who came here as a receiver. Mm-hmm. He went from being a mid-round pick to a first-round pick because nobody could cover him all week here in Mobile.
I mean, that's a blast from a pass. He was drafted by Jacksonville, right?
Correct. First round. Yeah, I was here for that week, and I'll never forget it. No one could cover him. And look, my second Senior Bowl, our friend Brian Westbrook out of Villanova was part of that class here at the Senior Bowl, and obviously everybody knows how great of a player he was. So you just now, what I would tell people, you have to be careful of overvaluing the Senior Bowl. The Eagles will tell you that yes, they were drafting a lot of players out of the Senior Bowl. Sometimes they just overvalued it. Danny Watkins, I hate to bring it up, but I'm just giving you an example of he was incredible here. See, at Senior Bowl practice, Josh, to give you an idea, you could sit in the stands, you can get on the field, and I remember Danny Watkins right in front of me, just taking dudes and tossing them. Now he was 26 years old, he was older than you'd like, and we know it didn't work out at all for him. He had a brief NFL career, he didn't really love football, which is clearly a mistake by the Eagles. You should know that, but hey, they got it wrong. But Howie Roseman has done a phenomenal job last 4 years in the draft, other than Jordan Davis, who's certainly contributing a little bit. But Howie kind of knew. I remember talking to the Eagles front office people, work with Howie then for a number of years, and they learned, just take it for what it is. 2 days of really hard practice, one light day on Friday, which is the day before the game, and then they have the game. So you got to be careful with what it is, but it definitely has a lot of value.
Yeah, you mentioned about you always don't get it right. It was at the Senior Bowl that David Gettleman said he fell in love with Daniel Jones. So, he had a good week. I was here. Yeah, I was actually all right. I didn't know you were going to bring that up, but let me just explain. So, and it's just like the Eagles with Carson Wentz. Wentz had a great week here in Mobile in 2016. So in 2019, Daniel Jones out of Duke. You got to see what he's got. He had a very good week here. Size, arm strength, athleticism. But again, it's just a brief time. It's a snapshot in time. The most important grade is the tape from your games over your course of your career, and that's why you got to be very careful. And by the way, you can't in practice, Josh, just so people know, there's no blitzing. It's a lot of one-on-one coverage, and you can't tackle anyone. So more often than not, a quarterback is going to look good here. Sometimes they don't. But more often than not, they do, and that's why you got to be very careful. Adam Caplan down in Mobile, Alabama for Senior Week, joining us here for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast at Caplan NFL on the Twitter X platform. Adam, one more on the Senior Bowl before we move back to the Eagles' upcoming Super Bowl 59 matchup. I want to know from you, what is it about the Senior Bowl that you think that NFL teams find most valuable?
All right, so let's go over to Quinyon Mitchell. Okay, I wanted to talk about this because this was done. Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, came on our show with Jeff and I, and he explained what happened. So NFL teams were not sure if Quinyon could play man coverage because he didn't, man press coverage because he didn't, not one snap at Toledo. He was an off coverage corner who closed well, and he had great hands, played with high intelligence. But you can't be drafting a player in the first round at corner if he can't play press coverage. It's just you can't. Now, most teams play a lot of zone, but at some point you're going to play man coverage. Although the Eagles, like most teams, like a lot of teams, don't play a lot of it. They're in bottom 5 in man coverage. But you know what? They're going to do it, and you have to be able to do it. Although even if it's only an eighth of the time. And so what teams want to know is see him if they could see him in press coverage. So guess what? They dropped his zone with him, and he played a lot of man coverage here last year, a lot of press, and that got him in the first round. Like, he was clearly the best corner for the draft, and that's proven out, more or less. And to be honest with you, Josh, if Quinyon Mitchell was not here, there was zero chance he was going in the first round. I can tell you it's a fact. So your question, the value of it, that's a big one. And then I'll give you one, because Connor Barwin, who was not drafted by the Eagles, he was drafted as by the Texans. He was a tight end / edge rusher at University of Cincinnati and a basketball player. Teams wanted to see him stand up and rush here. They also wanted to see him play with his hand down. I remember that because I remember writing for Scout.com when I was covering the Senior Bowl for them and writing about every day's practices. Like, you need to see that. I mentioned Antoine Randall. You got to see what else he can do. The more you can do, there's no doubt about it. So you want to see versatility. You want to see how much they improve day after day. Because today and tomorrow, the two heaviest practices. Thursday is the light practice. Friday's the walkthrough. Saturday's the game. And Josh, I would tell you in the game, it's not always fair. Like, I remember Joe Flacco, who had a good week of practice, not great, but good, in 2008. He was he came in last, and he couldn't get into a rhythm in the Senior Bowl game, and that's not really fair. So for quarterbacks and play, it's not a very good group here, to be honest with you. It's you never know. You never know, because again, it's just practice, but you just have to take it for what it is. Man, there's a lot that you should, like, senior players who get invited, they should never turn this down. I don't care where. Like Carson Palmer, by the way, he knew he was going to be the first pick overall. In 2003, Josh, he still came here. That's what you should do, and it certainly helped him.
Adam, you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. A huge part of the reason why the Philadelphia Eagles are in Super Bowl 59 is because of how the Eagles rebuilt that secondary, and now they get their second shot at the Kansas City Chiefs. First of all, just give the audience your take on the Eagles advancing to their second Super Bowl in 3 years.
Yeah, that was an amazing game, because when they got up early, and this is what I said on our show last week, Jane Daniels had brought the team back, Washington, a bunch of times, but never any really big deficit. If they get up 2 touchdowns, which is what happened, the Eagles could roll this team. And then it looked like they were going to roll, and then Washington had the fake punt where we were like, wow, that was a really nicely executed fake punt by Tress Way to Ben Sinnott, the second-round tight end, who, by the way, senior last year was phenomenal out of Kansas State. So right when they did that, we were thinking, okay, well, this game might be a little bit closer than we expected after the start the Eagles had, but then the Eagles they really took care of it. The turnovers, the couple really good positives. Obviously, Hurts was terrific. Barkley was terrific. But here's the thing with Hurts. He showed that the left knee was not a problem, because he didn't really know. You didn't really know during the week. We know A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown did say this. He said his knee was feeling better. He sure looked like it. I don't know that he looked like his normal self, but he was close. That's a great sign, and they have a bye week this week. So even more time to get the knee right. And now the situation at center and guard was fascinating, because Cam Jurgens, we were told, barely did anything on Friday. And they knew after the Saturday walkthrough there was no way they were going to start him, and he would only be available on an emergency basis. Well, he had to play because Landon Dickerson hurt his knee. We're expecting Jurgens to play. Dickerson, we hope. He's got to get through the rehab part of it. get his knee right. We know how tough he is. So listen, if he could walk and move a little bit, he'll play. But he's got to get through practice next week. But overall, Josh, it was just a dominant performance. Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts won a lot of games together. Based on what happened last year, this has been a huge bounce back for both of them, particularly lately. And it's good, as Jalen said, and I know exactly what he meant, that they took the shackles off. I thought that was phenomenal when he said that. I knew totally what he meant. I just didn't hear it because we were doing our post game show, Josh, when he said it. So I listened to it and read it. I'm like, okay, clearly, because they let him throw the ball, and he was great. So he's going to have to be great, Josh, as we turn the page to next week. And you saw what happened 2 years ago. Jalen was great, and they still lost. But we're not going to have any slipping on the turf. That's not going to be a problem.
No, definitely not. That's one of the major differences between 2 years ago and now. So Adam Caplan, NFL insider, joining us here in Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. What is the biggest concern or concerns heading into an Eagles-Chiefs round 2 matchup?
Yeah, and it's really Steve Spagnuolo, the former Eagles assistant coach, right? Spags, who's been a great defensive coordinator in the last 20 years, maybe one of the top 3, is what's going to come. He's going to blitz. They're a top 5 blitz team. You don't always know when they're going to do it. They'll blitz in the red zone. They'll blitz the 50. It's just when will they do it, at what point of the game, but they're going to do it. You saw what happened on that last play against to win it, to clinch it. Against the Bills, he brought the house. He didn't care. He's just a really good football coach, and he's bounced back after Sean Payton fired him. He was out of football for a year. And Greg Cosell told us, who will be with us tonight for Patreon at 8 Eastern, Greg said he sat with him for a season and watched tape at NFL Films, which is pretty cool. So Spags doing a great job. Their cornerback group is good, not great, but they execute really, really well. But Jalen Hurts, who's improved against the blitz after a tough deal last year, the big thing for Kellen Moore and Jalen is to get together. What are their blitz beaters? The hot routes are hot routes in every drop back. That's not a secret. Knowing where everybody's going to be, and Jalen's, one thing that Jalen's been very underrated with, doesn't do it a ton, but he's checking the ball down more than last year, and that you have to do that against Spags because he's going to bring the heat. And getting Juergens right with the back and Dickerson right with the knee, got to get that because it's going to come, and just being ready. And then obviously for Eagles, the Chiefs, even without Ray Rice, the best receiver who was lost for the season due to torn ACL, Josh. They're still very deep. Hollywood Brown came back late in the season. Worthy, their first-round receiver, he's been very impressive. They're not. We'll talk more about this Friday. They're not throwing the ball very deep with him. It's a lot of short to intermediate run after the catch stuff. He's been really, really good. He's helping them at all parts of the field. Kareem Hunt had a revival last week at running back over Pacheco. He looked pretty good. Now, I don't worry about him as far as explosiveness. He's not. But the big one is what is obviously going to be Travis Kelce. And you saw what Zach Ertz, of all people, did last week, Josh. So we'll have more about this. We'll have more on this when we do the matchups on Friday. But and then obviously we'll look to we'll start previewing what the regular week will look like when they get the regular practice schedule. One thing I'll leave you with, Josh, and the NFL instituted this in the last 7 or 8 years. Even if you don't practice during the bye week, or you do, no matter what, if it's a bunch of walkthroughs, you must release a practice report Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, no matter what. So we're going to know if there are any pop-up injuries on Wednesday.
All that information and more you can find Inside the Birds podcast. Like, subscribe, download wherever you get your podcasts, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds on YouTube. And as Adam Caplan mentioned, the Patreon, where you get all the extra insights with Adam and Jeff Mosher and Andrew Duchecko and more. And, of course, he is down there at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Adam, appreciate you jumping on today.
Thank you.